Are you ready, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Your Honor.
Call this meeting to order, please. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, a preamble to the Missouri Constitution, and we'll have an invocation from Ted Martin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe, and grateful for his goodness, to establish this Constitution for the better government of the state. Now, Mr. Martin.
Good evening. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. Thankful for the rain and the cooler fall temperatures as we enter the Christmas season here in the Ozark Mountain Country. Father, we invite you in these chambers tonight. We seek your guidance and your direction and your favor for our city and for those that we serve, our visitors and our businesses. Father, we also thank you for two special groups tonight. One is Fund-YTD, one of our 200 plus employees that strive for excellence every day as we serve our community. And the two is the obvious, our week with our veterans here in Branson as we celebrate with them tomorrow with the Veterans Day Parade. Father, we pray for safety, for your guidance. We're thankful for your love and your forgiveness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
King.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
Simmons.
Here.
Akers.
Here.
Gaines.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we have a special recognition as to Alderman Jamie Whitus to make a special presentation. And Fawn, if you're ready, yeah, come on down.
How are you? Good. It's my privilege to present the City of Branson's Service and Excellent Employee of the Month Award for November 2020 to Public Works and Engineering Office Assistant Fawn Rowe. This award is to recognize employees who have gone above and beyond and whose performance exemplifies the City of Branson values. Fawn is receiving this award due to her outstanding diligence and determination in improving several digital processes in the department. They have significantly streamlined, organized, and helped the department to be a good steward of the city's resources. Specifically, Fawn led the department's efforts in transitioning to Citizen Serve, created and implemented an entire building maintenance work order database, and created several online report forms that have been extremely valuable for the city. Fawn is a team player who is always looking for ways to help and ways to improve how things are done. On behalf of the mayor, the Board of Aldermen, city administrator, and city staff, it is my honor to present this plaque naming Fawn Rowe as the City of Branson's November 2020 Service and Excellence Employee of the Month. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Fawn, you're welcome to say something if you want to.
Don't give her a chance, Mayor.
I saw them give me the sign to say.
I just want to thank everybody at the city, and we have such a wonderful department, and they allow us to be able to move forward, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Fawn. We enter now the public comment section. You all that have been here before and are aware, and I see mostly faces I recognize, that the procedure, the decorum for the public speaking and a limit of 5 minutes is in play. This time I'll ask Madam Clerk to make me aware of any speakers.
We have one speaker tonight, Doug Clark.
I mentioned the last time I was here, it's Doug Clark, 121A St. Andrews Street, Branson. I was poking around in some stuff in California on the vaccine plan, and I thought, well, I looked that up, and lo and behold, we have one for the state of Missouri. And while I think this is pertinent, there's a lot of thought going into how they're going to do this and who they're going to do it to. And it basically is quite a little involved document. If I can find it here. There it is. So this is what I showed. And I asked last time, has anybody examined this or seen this document for Missouri yet? Okay, why this is pertinent is that we have a new administration apparently coming into power, and they have a different concept of how they will treat COVID, several platforms, and they are going to lock us down again if you haven't been picking up on the language. They're already doing it in some states. The World Health Organization's involved in doing the same policy in England, New Zealand, and Australia. They have detention centers set up. If you do not cooperate, you can get arrested, and it's becoming very draconian in those three areas there specifically. So what I'd like to mention here tonight is that there's a vaccine involved in this, and it's called, the first one that they're going to have on the table is from Pfizer, and it's a RNA type of vaccine, and it has to be kept at a negative 92 degrees below zero while it's being stored. So, you know, here's my problem with some of this preparatory stuff. I've been involved in inventory control and materials management, primarily in my corporate.
Doug, that microphone, you need to get a little, oh, there you go.
Okay, so it's a big logistical transfer that you have. You have to keep track of all this stuff. You have to make sure that everybody that's involved in it is doing their job. And there's been instances where they've had different kinds of vaccines that had to be kept at a certain degree of temperature, that if they did not do that, it caused some real damage to kids and individuals, sometimes death. And it's been as recent as 2 or 3 years ago, you know. But that's a possibility. And since they're rushing this through, you know, they're speeding the process up on this, and it's got lots of things that can happen that are very negative with it. The first people they're going to use this on tested today, they said it was going to be 90% effective on preventing somebody from getting this. And they really haven't done any animal test on it like would be the normal protocol. And what they are trying to do now is get a emergency authorization use for this to bypass all of that and also not have any liability of any damage that happens to anybody they happen to use this on. So healthcare workers are the first ones that are going to get to experience this, doctors and anybody involved in healthcare. And the last time that they attempted to do something like this was in 2001 and 2 when we were involved in the trade towers bombings. And they were worried about biological warfare. They were worried about anthrax and smallpox. And so they were trying to prepare for smallpox, and they decided that they didn't have any seed virus for that, and the only place they found it was in France. It was frozen for 30 years, and that's what they used. So the people that were in the medical community that were listening to all the particulars on this decided that they did not want to have any part of that. It almost caused a mutiny in the healthcare system at that time. And I remember talking to people that I knew that were working for Cox and the other company there in Springfield, and they had so many people that were refusing it that they had to just withdraw, and they never did require the medical community to go through with it. So right now, the people that are hearing about this one are saying that 60% of the nurses are not willing to accept any type of mRNA or RNA vaccines for safety reasons. Doctors are a little more lenient. They'll take 40% of the doctors will take it, and only 30% of the public is going to take it. So then you have a quandary here with the federal government that are letting the military distribute this vaccine and manage the inventory control and tracking and tracing and everything that has to go in this. So, you know, I think we need to be very careful on becoming an authoritarian situation here by forcing people to take this. It's going to be not a very good situation. There are a lot of people that I know that even work locally in the healthcare community that are employed by them as a doctor or a nurse practitioner that say that they're not going to take it. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a diminishing return on how many people you have to take care of the COVID situation itself, you know. And that's just one aspect that bothers me about what we're doing here with this. You know, there's a track history of government not being very invested on the liability factor for protecting people from vaccine damage. It started in 1986 with the liability exemption they had, so, you know, they kind of slacked up on what they did.
Doug, you're down to 30 seconds.
So that's what I would say, that, you know, if anybody's interested in this stuff, there's ways that you can look it up if you take the time. And first of all, don't take everything that you hear, if it's from a government agency, a health department, or anybody else, on face value. You need to check it out yourself and see who's telling you the truth or not. Because you know, if you listen to the political climate, you can't hardly tell who's telling the truth. So why would you trust a medical community that doesn't have the same kind of oversight that the politicians
Doug,
do?
thank you.
Okay. That's my worry.
All right. Just the one speaker tonight, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
Your Honor. Yes.
We're ready to go to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any members of the audience would like moved down from the consent agenda to ask additional questions or comments? Any items the board would like moved down?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move item number 5 and item 14, please.
Madam Clerk, do you have that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any other items? Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda as amended?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes of October 22nd, 2020 study session and October 27th, 2020 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of minutes of the Planning Commission regular meeting of October 6, 2020. Final reading of Bill Number 5900, an ordinance adopting a budget, a capital program, a pay merit plan, and a reserve policy for the City of Branson, Missouri for the fiscal year January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Final reading of Bill Number 5901, an ordinance amending the adopted 2020 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies for various funds. Final reading of Bill Number 5904, an ordinance approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Branson Lakes Area Tourism Community Enhancement District to license the Explore Branson domain name and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5905, an ordinance approving a contract renewal with DAZE Integrations pertaining to information technology managed network and security services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5906, an ordinance appointing Thomas Motley as municipal court judge and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5907, an ordinance appointing members to fill certain vacancies on City of Branson Tax Increment Financing Commission. Final reading of Bill Number 5908, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with PepsiCo for vending services and merchandise resale and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5909, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Site 1 Landscape Supply pertaining to the purchase of agriculture supplies and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 5910, an ordinance amending Chapter 6 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to alcohol by way of malt liquor. Final reading of Bill Number 5911, an ordinance amending Chapter 94 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to microbreweries. Final reading of Bill Number 5914, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Empire Energy LLC pertaining to motor fuel, vehicle fuel, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you. The floor is open for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda that as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made, second. Please vote on the consent agenda. There are 6 aldermen present, 6 yes votes. For the record, Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whiteth, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, Bob Simmons all vote yes. Recorded. We are now ready to go to the regular agenda. We'll begin with item number 5. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction for this item.
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 5902, an ordinance calling an election in the city of Branson, Missouri on the question of authorizing the city to issue bonds and imposing a tourism tax.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Is there a staff report at all that we want first? Or-
I'm just here to answer questions.
And then I would accept a motion to approve the bill on its final reading.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. There's been a motion to second. Now time for discussion. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Alderman?
Yeah, on the exhibit 1, it's on page 2 of this. Page 2 of the exhibit, in red print, it says there are 2 options for questions that can be placed on the ballot.
That's correct.
Have we chosen which option we're putting on the ballot?
We did. We went through this in a study session a couple of times, and at the end of the last study session, it was my understanding that we did option number 2, and there was reasons behind that. Do you want me to go through those reasons?
Well, option number 2, is that the option that?
That is the one that we had originally, the one that it's just a basic, like a renewal.
So
The one we
it-
chosen in 97, yes, sir.
Yeah, so the first option 1 was without the renewal.
The one, yes, the option 1 would be different, and how it's different is it doesn't have, it would not have a sunset. However, it would be an annual pledge, which would cause lack of investors to want to invest in that, high risk, more cost of issuance, just higher cost altogether for the city. And we went through that, but that was the reasons.
Okay. I really just want clarity on that.
Sure.
I think another option, another benefit is having a sunset, then it goes back to the voters.
Yes, sir.
What they want to do at that.
Absolutely.
And I know that'll be years down the road.
Certainly. Does that answer your
That
question?
answered my question. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Are you ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Julia King, yes. Larry Milton, yes. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Skanes, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. You have approval. Now we're ready for the final reading of Bill number 5912. Madam Clerk?
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 5912, an ordinance amending Chapter 94 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to special events.
Any staff comments prior?
No, sir. Just happy to answer any questions.
Need a motion to accept the bill, approve the bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made in the second. Any discussion from anyone in the audience? Any aldermen wishing to discuss? Mr. Milton?
Hi, Joel.
Good evening.
I think when we discussed this at the last meeting, what I believe I learned was it's really unfair for our department heads, our directors, to come up with a budget, an annual budget, and then have events, unknown events throughout the year. And I'll use Chief Matthews as a good example. Chief Matthews has a budget. He's allocated so many resources. The city has numerous events. It's not in Chief Matthews' budget. So in this example, the police department would have additional expenses that were not approved in his budget. So instead of punishing his budget for these unknown expenses, and instead of charging the event organizer the additional charges to the city, or instead of increasing event fees, I'd like to think that there would be some process, internal process that we can do within the city to cover those expenses. And in this example, especially when we're bringing in a tremendous amount of additional revenue. And the example I'm going to give is, just real quickly, our tourism tax revenues year-to-date through the third quarter in 2018 was 8.9 million, 2019 was 8.4, and this year was 5.3. So in reviewing the budget, it looks like everybody did a great job on reducing expenses. I keep looking at ways of, in addition to reducing expenses, to increase revenue. And so in this bill, it has the event fees for these different events. And I know when we talk about 5,000 people, I reviewed some of these numbers just briefly with Jamie. So these aren't exact, but they make the point. 5,000 people generates about $1.5 million of economic impact to the city. That's twofold. The 1.5 million economic impact is money that visitors are paying to hotels, lodging, they're paying at restaurants, they're paying at retail. They're spreading $1.5 million more in our city for an event of 5,000 people. And it generates, give or take, a little over $180,000 a year in tax revenue. So on page, well, on line 20, excuse me, on line 127, which is the Appendix A fee schedule, what I'm attempting to do here is look at the bigger picture. If we can generate more revenues into our city and then internally come up with a way to not penalize different departments that have additional costs by bringing in this additional tax revenue, that's what I'm advocating. So I'd like to make an amendment. On line 126, Appendix A fee schedule, I would like that, I guess it would be line 127, to revert back to the original language.
Just so I'm clear, line 127 is the grid, the code section, description, and fee chart.
Yes.
And the only change that was made was the special event application that used to be 110 to the new 3 levels we see now. You're wanting to take it back to just one item of
Yes.
110?
Yes. And there again, the intent is we want to encourage as much new business into the city as we can. And I think by charging the event organizers more money to bring an event in, I think the spirit of this is we're trying to generate more revenues from the event organizer to help pay for these additional expenses. But I fear we're losing sight of the gross tax dollars that we would be losing if we lost an event.
Madam Clerk, do you, is that a motion?
I have a motion, yes.
Okay. You want to read the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Milton moved to amend line 126, Appendix A fee schedule. On line 127, he wants to revert back to the original language.
Which according to the sheet that I see here, it's 111 is what I'm seeing. Is that right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's 111.
And that was applicable to all levels. Now there are the special application for $50, and then there's the level 1, 2, and 3 events that you see scheduled there. You've heard the motion. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I believe we're ready to vote on the item 14, Bill 5912. Please vote. There are 6 present, yes, 5, 1 no. Julia King, yes. Larry Milton, no. Jamie Whitish, yes. Jeff C., yes. Bill Scaines, yes. Bob Simmons, yes. It passes 5-1.
Thank you.
Ready to move on to regular agenda item number 16. Presentation of the third quarter 2020 financials.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a financial update as of September 30th, 2020. Third quarter financials. Here we have a picture, a look of, and we started doing this side by side, especially in this year, because I thought it was important for y'all to see what we see and really what the Finance Committee sees in the financials. So this is all governmental funds as of September 30th, 2020 and September 30th of 2019. There's a couple of things I want you to notice. The expenditures in 2020 are 51 million. Revenues are at 49 million. Revenues in 2019 are 62 million, and expenditures are 51 million. A couple of things that I want you to notice is keep in mind this year was COVID, and so we know that the revenues are down as a result of our sales tax decrease. We've already gone through that several times, and we talked about that we had anticipated originally with COVID that 45% is what was going to be our benchmark, and if we can really make it past the 45%, we're doing good, and so far we're doing great as far as sales tax go, even though the comparison is down and we are still down, the sales tax is still down about 21%. We are not at the 45% level. So that's good and bad at the same time. We're still way down. However, we're not down near as much as we thought we were going to be. Okay, so the other thing is, here is the expenditures. And I started doing some more research in that because just that picture kind of makes you question it. Here's the deal. With that, this is all governmental funds. And so if you recall a little bit earlier in the year, I brought before you a budget amendment, and it was for, we were paying off a bond, and we had $7 million set aside in a debt service reserve fund that we needed to move over to pay that expense. That expense is recorded in that all governmental funds. So excuse it just a little bit. So you can, if you subtract the $7 million from the expenditures, you're actually at around 44 million, which is 7 million less than the previous year. So there's trends, and then there's things that skew trends and one-time anomalies, and that is one of the largest things that I wanted you to see, okay?
Question, Jamie?
Yes.
I think we discussed it in the last meeting. By expending that, how much did we wind up saving the city? Because I think that needs to be on the record.
Oh, goodness. Well,
It was a bunch
I'm going to
of
say
money.
approximate because I know it was more than $2 million. And when we did the refinance in 2015,
Right.
I want to say it was closer to $2.5 million in total and off the debt. But I'm going to double check that to get you an accurate figure, but I know it was more than $2 million.
I just want to make sure it was on the record for people.
Absolutely,
If
yes.
they see the red over the darker color, then that's problematic. And to
Yes.
illustrate that it's, by taking this action, it saved the city $2 million. That needs to be well run.
And keep in mind, that money at the time of the refinance back in 2015, that was set aside and put aside because there were a couple of bonds that were not callable until 2020. So it was taken out and set aside in a debt service reserve for that purpose because we could not refinance a few of those bonds that were wrapped up in that waterfall. So that was purposeful the way it was done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to move on to the general fund revenues by category. License and permit fees decreased by $250,000 from 2019 and increased by $109,000 from 2018. Courts receipts, they continue to decline. Leases and rents decreased by $358,290 from 2019 and decreased $121,000 from 2018. We say a majority of this is Highway 76 lease revenue, but there's also a couple of things that I want to point out. One is we no longer are getting the lease revenue from the ballparks, which is wrapped up in that, and that was $92,000 a year. So that is an ongoing amount of lost revenue. And the other one is, if you recall, we also amended a lease as part of that Highway 76, and the adjustment was around $80,000. So that about $172,000 is going to be an ongoing reduction that you see, and that's not as a result of COVID. The rest of it it's a percent of sales for those leases, and when those businesses weren't open and when those businesses are hurting, as is every business probably across this country, then you'll see a decrease in sales and so on and so forth. So I wanted to touch on that just a little bit so you knew what we were doing. Charges for services, again, that's a budget that we do a fixed amount. This is a look at the general fund, excluding transfer ins and transfer outs, so really more operational in nature. Revenues are $2.3 million less than 2019, largely due to a decrease in our sales tax, and expenditures are $71,000 more than 2019. And if you put it into perspective here, we had raises and we had some insurance and all of those increases, so $71,000 increase in expenditures is a really good picture. We could be a lot more up, is what I'm trying to say. This is a look at the public safety fund. Again, there are a couple things that I just want to address here. Revenues are $3.6 million. Expenditures are $8.2. Our subsidy from the general fund is $4.5. So if you combine all of those and you put them together, we are down as of September 30th about $462. And really what that means is right now, as of September 30th, you're starting to dip into your reserve to use those for operational purposes in the tune of $462. It doesn't seem like a lot right now, but you still have 3 months left, okay? Well, we're going to transfer a little bit more from the subsidy, and some of that will line out, but you're going to see a continued probably decline here.
Question, Jamie.
Yes.
I'm getting questions about we're collecting the public safety tax, but we're not building the buildings yet. And the question has been to me, what are we doing with the money? Which is a fair question. I mean, we're not pounding it down a rat hole, obviously.
No. So yeah, what we're doing with the money is paying for operations. And as you can see right here, it's not enough. So COVID has some things to do with that, but not everything. There's other things paid for, like the radio contract that we did, and that's a 3-year contract. We did we did a restructure of staffing, and we increased some wages. We also added new staff, quite a bit of new staff, which is going to raise your operational expenditures. And so right now, we're paying for operations, and we're still, as of September 30th, dipping into our reserve by $462. So those buildings that we want built, we're going to have to put our heads together and think of something else, because our operations are using all the money that we're bringing in at this point in time and the subsidy.
Do you think that's strictly because of COVID and reduced?
No, I do not.
expenditures?
I don't think so.
That's concerning.
We added staff. We raised raises. When you add staff, here's the deal. Here's what you can think about. When you add staff, and I always do an average just so y'all can get a picture. It's not going to be that way all the way straight across the board, but to give you a picture, on an average, if you add one staff person, you can think about it this way: adding $100,000 to your operational expense. And the reason why, and again, it's not straight across the board, but you add benefits, all the benefits that we offer, and the salaries, all of those, their loggers, their pension, everything that we provide, which is amazing, and we're thankful for. It's not a negative thing, but if you think about $100,000 and you think about adding 15 additional staff, what have we just done? We have added $1.5 million to the operational expense on an annual basis. And what does that do? Year over year over year, that compounds and it grows 5% every year. So when you're thinking about that, some choices are made. Do we want more and more staff and we want them right-sized, or do we want buildings? So those are the things that we have to think about when we're moving forward, because right now, as you can see, you can't do it all. I mean, I'm speaking factually for the numbers' sake, and I'm hoping I'm answering your questions, but right now, as of September 30th, now, I will say COVID does have some to do with it. Not all, but some, because think about it this way. Our taxes are down 21%. If those taxes were coming in, we hadn't had COVID, subsidies are right-sized, those things. The long-term effect, probably still going to be pushing it out a little bit, but not as much. Does that make sense? So
I get it.
I hope I helped you answer the question. But again, speaking factually and about the numbers, there you go. Okay?
I understand.
Okay. Is there any more questions on the Public Safety Fund? Okay.
Just, Jamie, one other quick comment.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
Obviously, when we get ready to build buildings, if we go into the marketplace and try to seek funds, our position right now, because of the way that the companies rate us from a bonding capacity standpoint, it's going to be a period of time.
Absolutely.
It's going to be 2 to 3 years before we're really able to borrow the kind of funds we need to build buildings. That's the reality of what's going on.
Excellent point. It's going to be at least mid-year 2022, at least.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any more questions on this one? I'll keep moving then. Okay, this is another picture of the general fund revenues and expenditures. This includes the transfer in and out, so the picture will change slightly. Revenues still decreased by 2.3, but expenditures also decreased by 1.1 million. That is due, okay, so the TIFs are included in the transfer in and out, and so are the subsidies. So if you recall, we decreased, and then the TIFs have decreased slightly as well. So that all makes up this picture change here. This is gross sales tax for all governmental funds as of September 30th, 2020. General fund sales tax ended the third quarter 18.2% down. Tourism tax 37.2% down. And transportation tax and public safety tax really kind of follow the sales tax. So it's 18.4 and 18.2.
Can we hold on that
Yes, sir.
a second where I can just study that a little better? This is better, if you can consider it better than what we'd projected, correct?
Yes, sir. My whole department did this. When we looked at the financial, the effects of COVID, we started it in March, and I believe in May we presented it. We wanted to look at if God forbid, we would have to be down 5 months, these 5 months were this period of time, what would be the percentage? So that would have been about 45%. So we, all the departments got together and started reducing expenditures, freezing positions, removing capital, removing internal service fund transfers, all of that to try to manage what happens if, and if is the 45% down, which in my opinion was hopefully worst case scenario. So yes, while we are doing better than 45% down, we're still down by almost 20%. 18% sounds better. So does that help answer your question?
Just need to make sure that we explain that to people when they see those numbers.
Certainly. Here's the sales tax net of TIF. We show you this to just kind of give you a picture about how the financials are doing outside of the TIF districts. And so you can see it's really similar in this in this area. We're down, the general fund sales tax is down 1.3 million, which is a 19.8% decrease. Again, this is the rest of the city outside the TIF districts. And tourism sales tax revenues for 2020 are 3.1 million less than 2019, which is a 37% decrease. So it's roughly the same.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question on that because I've been asked on this. The TIF for the landing, when does that come off?
The end of 27.
Okay. And the Branson North project as well?
The Branson Hills, it's 1 year after that, I believe. So it's 27 and 28, I believe.
Would it be fair to say that would be of substantial benefit to us when those TIFs come off as far as revenue goes?
Well, there's a couple of caveats there. And in a perfect world, yes, but however, we have some debt that are attached to some of those TIFs. We're watching that. I'm reaching out, and I just did that this week, so it's a really good question to ask. What we're looking at is trying to refinance those bonds again when they are callable. One of them is callable at the end of next year. We're going to be hard pressed to be able to refinance that until after the mid-year of 2022. But there are a couple of them that are callable at the end of 22. So at the end of 22, what we're looking to do is take some of that debt that's attached to those TIFs, refinance, shorten the life, and hopefully have some savings as a result to right-size those. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not making fun of you, Jamie, I promise.
I just made the comment, it depends on how bondable we are.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct. Here's a look at the tourism fund, including transfer ins and outs. Revenues are $3.5 million less than 2019, and expenditures and transfer outs are $3.6 less than 2019. Here's the deal with those. If you sit on the Finance Committee, I've probably talked about this to death, but in 2018, we paid off a bond issue, and in 2019, we paid off a bond issue. So while some of the expenditures are due to COVID and due to a decrease in what we could provide with the marketing expenditures, it's also largely due to we've paid off 2 bond issues, so you're going to see some of those expenditures stay down, okay? Here's a look at the Parks and Rec Fund as of September 30th, 2020. Operating revenues decreased by $452,000, and expenditures decreased by $254,000. And if you include their subsidy, and I'll just speak just like I did with the public safety tax, instead of they're not dipping into reserves, they are still ahead by $91,000 in total if you add all of that and look at the net revenues over expenditures. So right now they're still staying ahead, which is a really good picture for the park.
Yeah, I just make an observation. That's 9/30/20, does not reflect the latest month of the report.
Correct. October is not included in that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And then here's the last one. This is the water sewer, and this is including your transfer ins and outs, net of depreciation. Your revenues are $255,000 less than 2019, and your expenditures are $922,000 less. A portion of that $922,000 in 2019, we did a $525,000 transfer to the internal service fund, and we were, as a result of COVID, we did not do a transfer to the internal service fund. So that's kind of one of those anomalies I talk about. If you remove that, your expenditures are still down, okay? And I believe that is all, and I'm happy to answer any further questions that you might have on this item.
Any further questions from Aldermen? Any questions from the audience? All right. Nothing else? Jamie, thank you very much for your thorough report. We appreciate the update, and I'm glad it's better than you originally thought.
Me too.
Yeah. Ready to move on to item number 17. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the introduction?
Your Honor, this is the first reading bill number 5915, an ordinance approving the amendment to the lease agreement with Recreational Investment and Management Corporation pertaining to a reduction in base rent for fiscal year 2020 and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Again, with a staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is really an adjustment to the amendment that we brought before you at the last board meeting per the request. What we did was we just went ahead and included the 17% versus what we brought before you last time. So now it is up to $13,600 instead of $9,600, and that gets them all at the 7% reduction. And I'm happy to answer any further questions that you might have on this one.
All right, you've heard the first reading of bill number 5915. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? We had thorough discussion last time. Any additional questions? Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Individual yeses, Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons all vote yes. Passed. Ready to move to item number 18. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5916, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water for water termination services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with a staff report from Mike Ray, and there's Mike Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Missouri American Water Company supplies public drinking water to residents of Branson businesses and homes in the southwest section of town. The city of Branson provides sanitary sewer service to these same areas. The city has maintained an agreement since 2013 for Missouri American to provide water termination services to their water customers for non-payment of city sewer bills. Under this agreement, Missouri American, at the request of the city, will provide water termination to their water customer if that customer is connected to the city sewer system and has failed to pay the bill. Termination will occur following all attempts by the city to collect the unpaid charges through the city's delinquent notification process. Missouri American will charge the city for its cost to perform the water termination. Cost incurred by the city for termination of services will be transferred to the individual customer responsible for the non-payment of the sewer bill. Missouri American will restore water service to the customer following the city's receipt of the required payment for sewer services and the termination charges assessed by Missouri American. If approved, the agreement for this service will be for the fiscal year 2021. Staff recommends approval of the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. You've heard the first reading of Bill Number 5916. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
There's been a motion and there's a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to have questions?
I just have a quick question, Mike, under paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. Costs incurred by the city for termination transferred to the individual. The contract seems to be for $28,000. Is somebody getting double paid here? It's just a question. Or how does the city recover that? If we have a contract to pay them $28,000 and they're being paid by the customer, $15, $16 turned back on. Is that reimbursed back to the city?
Yeah, Missouri American will charge us, say there's a termination service, Missouri American will charge us $28 to terminate the water service. So we will recoup that cost. We pay that to Missouri American.
And then we recoup it back.
And then recoup that from the customer.
Thank you very much.
Alderman Simmons has a question.
I just want to ask a general question, Mike. This has been in effect several years now. It really requires a great deal of coordination between the companies and between the city. Has this worked well? I've heard no complaints at all, and it seems like this is something we'd be hearing complaints on every month if it weren't working well.
We've had very, very few issues. There have been a few items that we've had to work through, but it has overall worked very well. We are able to, recover cost, and before this contract was in place, we had to write off a substantial amount of revenue each year because of non-payment and no avenue for us to terminate water service. So it's actually worked out very well.
Thank you.
Is that pretty substantial amount of money overall, buddy?
Well,
is that 28,000 pretty close? Is that what we're trying to say?
That's a number that we started out with. It has tended to decrease over the years, and we looked at it this year, and we'll probably be in the $20,000 range. It's hard to predict if there's more shutoffs this year than normal for some reason. I don't anticipate that. But we started off really high with a lot of terminations, and it has started to wane off.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, Milton?
Mike, the $28,000, I know that's not to an exceed.
Right.
But do you have, off the top of your head, a ballpark of about how many shutoffs we have a year?
Normally, we may start off with between 50 and 70 notices of late payments. Finance will send letters to head off the shut-off terminations. We may, from those 50, we may dwindle it down to about 15 in a month, and sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. So we may have 200 to 300 shut-offs in a year.
Well, then I'm not sure what the other fees are. The $28,000, the shut-off fee for normal during business hours is $28.50, and after hours is $131.
Right.
So if they were all during business hours, that'd be $982. If they are all after hours, that'd be $213.
Yeah, we will have an average cost $15,000 to $20,000 a year for the fees that are charged to us from Missouri American. Where we had been in the $20,000 range, and you're right, that is just a not to exceed, just in case we have some anomaly of a year where we have a lot of water terminations. But for the most part, we're going to be in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
Okay. To split the difference of on hours and after hours, I mean, we'd be looking at somewhere around 400 or 500 shut-offs, right, for that math to work, unless on page 3 of 6, paragraph 8, paragraph 8 says, in addition to paying Missouri American Water for the shut-off fees and the activation fees, turn them back on.
Right.
We also pay them for the loss of water revenue.
Right.
While the water's shut off.
They have the right to collect that. We haven't noticed that fee coming. The amounts that are charged are strictly the $28.50 to turn it off, $28.50 to turn it on, $131 if it's after hours to turn it off, $131 to turn it on. So it does add up substantially. There are not that many after hours because people just, they can't afford to have that turned on after hours, and that's part of Missouri American's rules. They will charge that, but I can provide you the number of terminations that have occurred in the past year and those fees. I don't have that right off the top.
Yeah, no, and I don't
right
expect
here.
you to.
Yeah.
But if you could forward that over, I'm just trying to connect the dots of
Sure.
if we have 100 shut-offs and we
Sure.
do the disconnect and that during regular hours, I'm coming up with 5,000,
Yeah,
8,000. So I'm sure there's
Yeah.
something missing. If you'd forward that, I'd appreciate it.
But the intent of this is to help clean that up.
Right, and it is, the only fees that we will pay is the cost that we're provided. The $28,000 is just not to exceed ceiling. So if we're, $15,000 or less, then we just pay the actual cost. That is what the contract is for.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Are you ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Please vote.
Mayor, I have 3 responses right now. If everyone could please register their vote one more time, please.
Need to revote? Okay. There are 6 present, 6 yeses. The yeses are Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons. For the record, passed. Ready to move to item number 19. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction for this item.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5917, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Missouri American Water Company for the purchase of water usage data and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Again, we begin with a staff report from Mike Ray.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, under this agreement, Missouri American will supply their monthly water usage data to the city of Branson from each Missouri American customer that's connected to the city's sewer system. The city's finance department will use the individual customers' water usage to calculate the charge for city sewer service based on the volume of water used. Missouri American agrees to assemble and supply the water usage data during the fiscal year 2021 at a total not to exceed cost of $3,000. Staff recommends approval of the bill.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5917. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
A motion?
Second.
Second? Anyone in the audience? Any aldermen? Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons all vote yes. Approved for the record. Moving on to item number 20. First reading, please, Madam Clerk.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5918, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Utility Service Company Incorporated for ongoing maintenance and scheduled renovations of the city's water towers, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Again with a staff report from Mike Ray.
In 2012, utilities implemented a program for a qualified contractor to perform renovations and ongoing maintenance of the city's 8 water towers. Utility Service Company Incorporated was selected to perform the service under a management agreement that is reviewed by the city each year. The city has the option to renew the contract on an annual basis for an indefinite period of time. The city is the only party of the contract that has the option to cancel or renew, or not renew. Under this contract, 2 of the city's water towers are maintained under a complete service program. The Landmark Tower, which is located at 165 and 76 Country Music Boulevard, and the Junior High Tower, which is located on Highway 65 North. Both towers were renovated by Utility Service in 2012. Under the ongoing service program, Utility Service performs all necessary inspections, repairs, cleaning, and maintenance of these 2 towers. Annual service fees cover the cost of annual maintenance and a 10-year cycle renovation. Both the Landmark and Junior High towers are scheduled for repainting and renovation in 2021. The city's 6 remaining water towers are maintained under utility service under a alternate modified service portion of the contract, which addresses specific repair and cleaning needs for each of these towers as recommended and determined by staff. Under program, total program costs are set not to exceed $87,947.52 for fiscal year 2021, which includes the annual complete service fees of $58,260.48 for Landmark Tower and $27,543.04 for the Junior High Tower, $1,072 for an exterior wash of the Pacific Street Tower, and $1,072 for the exterior wash of the Walmart Tower located adjacent to Walmart on Highway 76 Country Music Boulevard. Funds for these expenses have been included in the 2021 fiscal year budget. Staff recommends approval of this bill.
Thank you, Mike. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5918. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter? Please vote. Six aldermen present, yes. Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons all vote yes. Passed for the record. Item number 21. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill number 5919, an ordinance approving a time extension amendment for an intergovernmental agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson regarding funding of the city's Plan 2020 sewer system improvement projects, and authorize the mayor to execute the amendment.
Have a staff report from Mike Ray.
On June 1st, 2020, the City of Branson entered into an agreement with Taney County Commission to obtain a portion of the city's half-cent sewer sales tax to be used for Branson's Plan 2020 sewer system improvement projects. This funding is provided to municipal projects within Taney County that meet capital improvement criteria under the sewer sales tax guidelines. Due to unforeseen circumstances of COVID-19 resulting in budget restrictions, the 2020 sewer improvement projects were paused or the start times were delayed until continued availability of county funding was confirmed. This amendment will allow for time to fully complete all eligible sewer projects that the city is moving forward. The 2020 funding agreement was approved for a total not to exceed cost of $1 million. The projects in this funding agreement include the upgrade of the force main at Lift Station 17 engineering, which is scheduled to be completed on November 23rd. The Compton Drive wastewater treatment plant flood protection preliminary engineering, which will likely go into February of 2021, thus the need for this extension. The sewer main extension in Spring Creek subdivision, the engineering is scheduled to be completed in November. The sewer collection system pipelining and manual hole sealing is complete. Harmony Lane 8-inch sewer extension, the construction is now complete. And the sewer main extension in Branson Hills at Aldi's, the construction is also now complete. Taney County has prepared an extension request for approval by the city. With final approval of the County Commission, the agreement termination date will be extended from December 31st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Staff recommends approval of the bill.
You've heard the first reading of bill number 5919. Do I have a motion approving the bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
I have a few
Mr.
questions. So, Mike, I don't know if this is a you question or a Jamie question. So these expenses that are listed here, the $999,250, am I reading this right, where the city is paying for these, actual making the payments, and the Taney County, that sewer reimbursement is, their agreement was to reimburse by December 31st, and because of all the reasons why, they're going to be reimbursing this in March instead of December.
That's correct. They will extend the deadline.
But nothing else has changed.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other? Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Voting yes, Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons. Passes for the record. Thank you, Mike. Ready to move on to item number 22.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5920, and an ordinance approving the intergovernmental cooperative agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson pertaining to the use of the Taney County Firearms Range and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with a staff report from Jeff Matthews.
Mayor and members of the board, this is an annual renewal of an intergovernmental cooperative agreement between us, Taney County Sheriff's Department, for the use of their firearms range for our annual qualifications and firearms training. We recommend approval.
Great, thank you. Have the first reading of bill number 5920. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved.
Motion, and there's second. Did you get something out of that, Madam Clerk? All right.
Quick.
The whole board approved the motion, and the whole board is
When
second.
it has no cost to it there, Chief.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Anyone going to complain about no cost? All right. Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Chief, you couldn't have negotiated a better rate?
It's pretty cheap, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Please, are you ready to vote? Please vote. Six present, yes, 6. Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons all vote yes. Passed for the record. Ready to move to item number 23, Madam Clerk.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5921, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Radiophone Engineering Incorporated to provide communication services and repairs and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin the staff report from Jeff Matthews.
Sure. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and members of the board, this is a contract renewal with Radiophone. 2018, we sent out RFPs for the installation of our radios and fixed equipment inside the cars. Radiophone has had that contract, and this is an annual renewal, the second renewal of that contract, not to exceed $15,000, and that's for all equipment that the city installs in cars. Staff recommends approval. Happy to answer any questions.
You've heard the first reading of bill number 5921. Do I have a motion approving the bill?
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second been made. Anyone in the audience? Any alderman wishing to speak to this
You
matter?
could negotiate a zero cost on this one, either?
Not on this one, sir.
Just checking.
Sensing you're ready to vote, please vote. Six aldermen present, yes, 6. Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, and Bob Simmons all vote yes, it passes. Madam Clerk, item number 24, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading bill number 5922, an ordinance approving the renewal of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Team, ADAPT, Branson Public Schools, and Branson Police Department pertaining to alcohol compliance checks at businesses and authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement.
Begin with a staff report from Jeff Matthews.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the board, she pretty well explained it there just in the opening, but this is an agreement between us and ADAPT in the Branson School District that allows us to do the alcohol compliance checks for underage drinkers. Although we didn't do any in 2020 because of COVID and our kids were not able to help us, we're looking forward to 2021 with this agreement. We recommend approval.
You've heard the first reading of Bill 5922. Do I have a motion approving the bill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second's been made. Madam Clerk, I'm sure you'll let me know if you're not clear on something, right? Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Mayor,
Yes.
Chief Matthews, what's the criteria you use for looking for your participants?
So they actually have to have a valid ID and they have to be under 21.
Under 21.
Right, because we pull no punches, we go in, we provide ID.
Gotcha. And you obviously pick males, females, just a mix
Yes, sir.
of. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman C. Any other questions? Sensing a vote, please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Voting yes are Bob Simmons, Bill Skanes, Jeff C., Jamie Whitus, Larry Milton, and Julia King. All vote yes, it passes. You all didn't know I could read backwards, did you? Ready to move on to item number 25.
Your Honor, this is the first reading bill number 5923, an ordinance approving the reimbursement agreement between the City of Branson and the Taney County Airport and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
Begin with the staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is the fourth agreement for an additional 5 years to reimburse the airport for qualified expenses up to but not to exceed the $10,000 annual and not to exceed $50,000 over the 5-year term. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
You've heard the first reading of bill number 5923. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second in there? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this matter? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, sir. Jamie, we did change the terms a little bit to allow them to utilize this for insurance. Is that right on that?
We did that for this year, for 2020. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
2020 only. In other words, they want to do that next year. If it's the same situation, they would have to come back and ask.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Any other questions? Ongoing agreement. Please vote. Six present, 6 yeses. Jeff C., Bill Skanes, Bob Simmons, Jamie Whitus, Larry Milton, and Julia King all vote yes. Passed, approved. Item number 26, Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5924, an ordinance accepting the proposal of UniFirst Corporation pertaining to the rental of uniforms and shop towels for the city and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract.
I have a staff report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, this is our uniform contract for all of our departments, utilities, public works, parks, and engineering. We received bids on October 18th of 2020. The Mayor Pride and Centos could not provide all the items after a thorough review and an estimation of an amount of uniforms needed for each employee of the overall bids. Let's see, for UniFirst. UniFirst was a low bidder in an amount of $17,681,776. The Clean Uniform Company was the other bidder that was able to provide everything, but was higher bid. Staff recommends services contract with UniFirst and the rental of uniform shop towels for the departments aforementioned for the 2021 year in an amount not to exceed $21,000. As you notice, that's a different amount than what the low bid was. This extra amount there, so I can explain that a little bit, is for damaged items that we have to pay for. If they're lost or damaged beyond repair or something, then we pay for those extra items like that over and above our normal contract amount. So that's why that little fluff is in there. And sometimes we don't use, near that amount. The bid included an option to renew 2 additional times. Review and approval by the Board of Aldermen required prior to entering into a renewal of the contract. Funds are available in the projected 2021 budgets for utilities, parks, public works, and engineering department. Staff recommends approval and we're glad to answer any questions.
You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5924. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second's been made. Anyone in the audience? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Yes, sir, just real quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph about the option to renew it 2 additional times. Are those tied in to the same 17,681 or that negotiated separately?
Yeah, it'll be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, quick question.
Yes,
Just curiosity. Since Centos was the highest at 32K, what would it have been if they could have provided all these items? Did that include the stuff requested?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your
Well,
question.
it says in here, Ameripride and Centos cannot provide all the items, but they did give us a price.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if that price didn't include the items they couldn't provide and what it might have been if they were able to.
Still not.
I'm just trying to say, how did they give us a number if they couldn't provide all of the stuff?
Well, some of their bid amounts were left blank for items that we actually needed.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Okay.
Their bid,
Is it still a maximum of 21,000?
Well, get my eyeballs
Put
back
those
on.
glasses on.
Yeah. The not to exceed amount will be 21,000. That's correct.
So would that be comparable to what Jeff's talking about?
No, it's
that'd be totally.
Centos just sort of, it'd have been as high as the national debt if you didn't include it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're comfortable?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Please vote. Six present, yes, 6. Bob Simmons, Bill Skanes, Jeff C., Jamie Whitus, Larry Milton, and Julia King all vote yes. Passed. Ready to move to item number 27. Madam Clerk, please provide the introduction.
Your Honor, this is the first reading of Bill Number 5925, an ordinance amending the adopted 2020 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies for the Tourism Fund for the Branson, Missouri Regional Airport TDD.
I have a staff report from Jamie Roush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We did receive the most recent billing from the airport, and that billing and the invoice was in the amount of $6,583.76. Just to give you a little bit of background, it's $8.24 for a visiting deplaned passengers. We do get the reports from the airport as well so that we can go through and audit those just to make sure the invoice is correct. To give you a little perspective, last year for the same time period, it was $48,294 for that invoice. This year it's $6,583.76. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
They've been affected too. All right. You've heard the first reading of Bill number 5925. Do I have a motion approving this bill?
So moved, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Anyone in the audience? Any alderman wishing to speak to this matter?
Just to reaffirm, this used to come out of the general fund years ago, and it was transferred over to pay out of the tourism tax.
It did. We transferred it all. It's coming out of the tourism tax, and it has been for quite some time. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There is a limit on how much can come out of the tourism tax. It's a little over 6 million.
That's correct. And so far, it's $3.2 million that we've spent to date after this one goes into effect.
So there's an overall max of 6 million?
That was
Yeah.
eligible to come out of the tourism.
Based on the amount of the road, it was because of the TDD and based on the amount of the cost of the road. Yes, sir.
Then when that starts coming out of the general fund, that becomes a real problem again, because that's a lot of, that's, even if everything's going well, that's more money coming out of the general fund than goes back in the general fund.
Thank you.
Jimmy, I'm assuming these reports that you receive of the deployments that they have, that's all electronic file format?
Well, they come to us and then we scan them in to make them electronic, but they come to us in paper form. Wow. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
But yes, they come from the Department of Transportation is the one that provides the reports, and the reports are good, and they show the amount of deplaned visiting versus originating so that we can do the quick calculation to make sure that we're paying for only the ones that were visiting. Does that make sense? So this year, just to give you some perspective, there was 1,019 deplaned. 799 of those were visiting.
We would have access to those, I'm assuming?
We scan them in, so sure. I mean, if I don't have any problems sharing those with you, if you want them.
Any other questions? Please vote. Six present, yes, 6. Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, Bob Simmons, all vote yes for the record. Passed.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask her one more question? I was thinking, Jamie, it was $8.70. Is it $8.24?
It is. It's $8.24. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ready to move on to item number 28, disbursements. Next item to review disbursements October 3, 2020 through October 30, 2020. Are there any questions regarding these disbursements? Do I have a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the disbursements from October 3, 2020 through October 30th, 2020?
So moved.
Second. All right. Motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Six aldermen present, 6 yeses. Bob Simmons, Bill Skanes, Jeff C., Jamie Whitus, Larry Milton, and Julia King all vote yes. For the record, passed. Time for reports. At this point in time, I would ask aldermen if they wish to give a report. First, begin with Alderman King.
No report, Your Honor.
Alderman Whitus.
Nothing at this time.
Alderman Simmons.
No report.
Alderman Skanes.
No, sir.
Alderman Milton.
Semper Fi. Happy birthday, Marines.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Jeff C.
My report is hoping for sunshine. That's about it for tomorrow.
Administrator Dobbins.
Yes, sir. Thank you. First and foremost, don't forget City Hall is closed tomorrow for the public. Secondly, there will be sunshine tomorrow, and there will be a parade. And I need you all to be aware that the Grand Marshal of that parade is our own John Manning this year. So if you have anything to throw at him, just please do it at that time. On Friday, we'll have a group here from Leesville, Louisiana. Their mayor, city administrator, and some aldermen and some folks from their Chamber of Commerce are coming up to visit. They will be here at 10 o'clock. If anybody would like to stop by, they're going to stop by. I've got some little things to give them, and we're going to give them a tour of the facility. And don't forget study session. And I bring this up specifically because it is an important one. We're going to be talking about our legislative priorities. So please, if you can be there, I greatly would appreciate it. And we have reached out to both Representative Seitz and Senator Moon-elect to visit with them regarding those items. And they have, one is accepted. I'm not sure if we've heard back from the second or not. Not yet. Okay. That's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. My comments are just, I'm always taken back by the recognition of our staff. We have staff that have served the head of their organizations in this state and have been well recognized. We have people in our police staff that have been recognized statewide, and you all have seen the recognition. So far, he's still got the same size head that I can tell. We have recognition of other staff. It's always, to me, an honor for peers to recognize people doing their job. They work hard at doing their job and learning, getting themselves better educated to know what they're doing. And I appreciate the fact that we have city staff that's just doing well. And I appreciate that. Christmas lights and lights are all turned on. We got veterans, obviously, tomorrow, 88 years of recognition for the veterans here in this community. We have Thanksgiving, obviously, coming up. I spoke to a veterans group this morning, and they are glad to be able to be here. Apparently, there's only about 50% of the numbers that they normally have that are going to be here in the community. The Adoration 72nd year is going to be occurring also on December 6th before we meet again in a regular board meeting. And then just keep in mind that we do have in April coming up an important election for our tourism tax. It's a fund that obviously able to generate the funds we need to be able to perform as a city of 12,000 people that invite 9 million people a year to come visit. And so it's an important thing that we have. And then municipal elections will occur. The Mississippi group will be coming, and they think we're doing something right. And I hope we can live up to the standards they've set for us. But we'll talk to them. And any of you aldermen who are available Friday morning, Stan mentioned at 10, please come. This time, do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Aldermen meeting?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Seconds made. Call for the vote.
I would say that that's Louisiana.
Vote yes, 6. For the record, Julia King, Larry Milton, Jamie Whitus, Jeff C., Bill Skanes, Bob Simmons, all vote yes. We are adjourned. I'm sorry, Bill.
Those folks in Leesville